Mitchell Renz here from the Raiders Report, and coming up on today's show, my reaction to ESPN's Las Vegas Raiders off-season predictions. So what essentially they did was they outlined an article, and they tried to break down the top 5 biggest predictions of the offseason, whether that was free agency, draft, however they were going to spend their money, quarterbacks that they were going to look at. Essentially what I'm going to do on today's show is give my reaction, give my 2 cents to the predictions that ESPN outlined here for the Silver and Black. Before we get into it, a little bit more of background information for some of the people that maybe don't know how much money the Raiders have in terms of salary cap space. As it stands right now, the estimated value is about $50.7 million, which is, I think, the 9th most in the NFL. Their first-round draft slot is the 13th overall pick. They have 9 picks in total as it stands right now, and some of the Raiders' biggest needs, as some of y'all might see this, and depending on when the Raiders hire a GM, I'm just saying, as it stands right now that I am making this video, GM, head coach, OC, quarterback, I think we can all admit are pretty big needs here to make sure that you never miss anything going on around the Raiders. The offseason is some of the most fun that we have, and the reason why that I say that is because this is when I get to meet a lot of the diehard fans, right? Raider Nation, when I say real one for life, it means real one, you're always tuned in, and to me, being a Raiders fan is a 365-day job, right? 366 this year. Anybody's going to watch in September, October, November, December, and anybody watches the team if they're in the playoff hunt. But to me, the people that I want to have a beer with, the people that I'm like, all right, these are the people that I really care about, they're the ones that watch in the offseason. So if you're one of those people, subscribe. We're going to have videos coming out every day this year. All right, let's go to the first thing here. Biggest offseason priority according to ESPN. So what do you guys think ESPN's going to roll with here for their biggest offseason priority? According to ESPN, it is figure out the full-time general manager and coach, then figure out the next quarterback. The Raiders went 5-4 under interim GM Champ Kelly and interim coach Antonio Pierce. And while they, along with rookie quarterback Aidan O'Connell, had scintillating victories over the Giants, Chargers, and Chiefs, they had losses to the Vikings and Colts that were just as disappointing. O'Connell has not shown to be the quarterback of the future, and Las Vegas didn't fix the issue with Jimmy Garoppolo signing last offseason. Keep in mind that Kelly and Pierce are not necessarily joined at the hip, and owner Mark Davis has said the GM will have final decision-making power. So my biggest takeaways from ESPN outlining the Raiders' biggest offseason priorities is this. I agree that Aidan O'Connell isn't the answer. If you want to settle for a backup quarterback going into this offseason, that's fine. That's you. That's the opposite of commitment to excellence. It's the opposite of just win, baby. Aidan is only a backup. Champ Kelly and AP are not tied together, and that has been very well known. Yes, it is expected that if Kelly is hired, AP is going to be hired, and it is expected they're going to be together. But if it's at Dodds, it can still then be Antonio Pierce. And then the GM will make the final decision. This is why the Raiders are interviewing GMs first. This is why they are going that way. This is what good organizations do, and it's why I think that the fact that they're going to go GMs will make the final decision is why they will rule with Antonio Pierce and why they will not hire Jim Harbaugh. So what do you guys think here? Do you want Aidan O'Connell to be the Raiders quarterback next season? I almost pronounced AOC, which I don't even know how to do that. Type Y for yes, or I want you to type your N for no. Do you want number 4, AOC, to be the Raiders quarterback next season? My answer after this YouTube ad break. I think what Aidan had to do this season was not easy. Being a rookie quarterback, filling in for Jimmy Garoppolo, filling in for Brian Hoyer. When you're the third-string QB and you get put in a situation, you get put in a tough situation. Has he gotten better as the year went on? Yeah, he definitely got better. The numbers indicate that. But I'll say this right now. If you're going to be a box score warrior and you're going to point out Aidan's numbers, to me, then you just didn't watch the game. Aidan's limited. And the AFC West and the NFL, when you're starting to bring in a brand new head coach, if you're not swinging for a home run at QB, I don't want you to be a part of this. Aidan's going to be a backup. That's all he is. The Raiders need to go out. They need to find a good head coach, good GM, and they need to go to find themselves a hell of a quarterback. All right, let's go to the other thing here for ESPN and their predictions. The under-the-radar offseason priority, which out of all of these, this was probably one of my favorites that ESPN laid out. And, a lot of times you talk about the head coach, you talk about the GM, you talk about the quarterback, but the biggest reason why I made this show was because the under-the-radar offseason priority for the Raiders is, guess who? Patrick Graham. This is what they had to say about it. What about retaining defensive coordinator Patrick Graham? His defense shined after Josh McDaniels was shown the door, carrying the weight for the Raiders offense. The defense allowed the league's fewest points from week 9 to 18, which was 16, and Graham might now get head coaching interviews or be a candidate for a raise as a DC somewhere else. For continuity's sake, defensive end Maxx Crosby said the Raiders need stability and consistency. Keeping Graham in-house is a must. Guess what? Keeping Patrick Graham is just as important as keeping Antonio Pierce. I have said that for weeks. I have said that for months, and I know how excited people were when the Raiders brought in AP, right? I mean, the Raiders had the number one defense in the NFL from when Antonio Pierce took over, but that's what I expect when you have a defensive-minded head coach. Patrick Graham, though, took a pathetic Raiders defense for years, turned them into one of the best defenses, and then you pair that with Antonio Pierce, which is why I said if you're the Raiders, it's so important to keep AP and Patrick Graham, and you keep them together, and then you go figure out and worry about the offensive side of the football. I could not agree more here with ESPN saying that keeping Patrick Graham is just as important as keeping Antonio Pierce. Book it. Before we get into the other three things that ESPN has prioritized for the Raiders this offseason, today's show is sponsored by Game Time. And Jeremy Chuggs and I, we're actually going to be out in Las Vegas during the Super Bowl week. So if you're going to be out there and you want to link up, hey, man, let us know. Maybe we can go, I don't know, to a Vegas Knights game together. Maybe we can go to a comedy event. Bottom line is this. Game Time is an amazing app, and I've been using Game Time way, way before they were a sponsor here on the show. And the reason why that I like it is because if you're a busy guy like me, forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, a whole lot more. I do think it's the perfect app for buying tickets when you're planning on visiting Las Vegas. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code RaidersChat for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code RaidersChat for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Other options that I really like, though, that Game Time has is if you know you're going to be traveling somewhere over the weekend, they have a tab. Guess what? You're in that city. Here are some things to do over the weekend. Maybe you're, I don't know, penny pinching a little bit after the holidays. I don't know about you. I am. I'm not afraid to admit it. I bought my dad something nice for Christmas, and guess what? Now I'm saving up a little bit. I mean, shit, how do you think Chuggs feels? He's got Hanukkah. That's 8 days worth. So you're saving up. You need some events under $50. Bottom line is this. If you like going to events, if you like creating memories with the people that you go to those events with, last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Download the Game Time app, $20 off with code RaidersChat. That link's available to you down in the comments and down in the description of today's show. All right, let's keep it moving here. ESPN said, will they re-sign Josh Jacobs? This is another ESPN prediction priority, and it's a question that I know we've asked a bunch here, right? Do you let him walk? Do you bring him back? What do the Raiders end up doing? ESPN had this to say. Jacobs had the worst statistical season of his 5-year career, 805 rushing and 6 touchdowns on the ground. But he also missed significant offseason and training camp work with the team because of a contract dispute while on the franchise tag. He turns 26 in February, so he should have enough tread left. One thing in his favor for a potential re-signing, should Pierce get the full-time job, he values the running game. Jacobs' production has been better since Pierce took over, and Jacobs still has a chance to land a contract earning 7 figures per year. So in terms of Josh Jacobs coming back, Spotrac has his market value at 3 years, $40 million, so at $13.3 million per year with $25.2 million guaranteed. I'm going to tell you this right now, Spotrac has been wildly off and wildly inaccurate in terms of what they project for running backs because they're still looking at the overall market of running backs from like 5 or 6 years, including this year. If you just look at last season alone, I'm telling you right now, Jacobs ain't getting that. Pierce also called Jacobs the heart and soul of the team. So, I mean, if you're going to bet on Maxx Crosby saying, hey, I want Antonio Pierce back, if Antonio Pierce gets hired and he says a statement like this, there's a part of me that thinks, yeah, they might end up bringing Jacobs back. I don't know if I would do it, but hey, if that's what they're saying, we'll see. But Jacobs also said that he wants stability. He wants a longer-term contract. So my question to all of you is, do you want the Raiders to bring back Jacobs? We know he's a hell of a running back. We know that he's 26 years old. And I don't like to sit up here and say, I predicted a bad year for Jacobs, but when you go back and you look at a lot of my videos in May, June, July. I mean, one of the videos that I made was history shows that Jacobs is going to have a down year. And guess what? He had his worst year in his 5-year, and it was one of the reasons why I didn't want the Raiders to give him that big-time deal last offseason. So guess what? As much as I like Jacobs, if it was up to me, I would say, based off of what Zamir White did, I would let him walk. However, though, if I'm also going to sit up here and say I'm going to put my trust in AP, I am going to put my trust in AP to be able to make the best decision for the Raiders. All I ask, though, is that you don't throw a 3-year, $40 million contract at him. This would be my offer to Jacobs. It would be 3 years, $21 million, with $14 million guaranteed. So the 2 years of that contract are guaranteed. That final year, if the Raiders want to be able to move on from him at 29 years old, they can do it. They can cut him. They can move on. Bottom line is this. The Raiders right now are not in the position to be able to pay a running back like Jacobs, coming off the worst year of his career, a hefty contract, considering the fact of they need to figure out a quarterback. You got to figure out a lot of other spots, and you're missing 3 pieces on an offensive line. I don't care who you have at running back. If you don't have a good offensive line, it doesn't matter, as we saw this season at spurts. All right, let's go to the next thing here for ESPN, the draft outlook. And, anytime you talk about the draft with Raider fans, I know that there is a little bit of a uneasy feeling, just for the simple fact, let's call a spade a spade. The Raiders have struggled, right, in the draft. There's no doubt about it. And ESPN believes this. A new front office and coaching staff will have a major impact on what the Raiders do in the offseason. But quarterback is where the conversation starts after Garoppolo failed to nail down the starting job long term. Drafting outside the top 10 likely keeps Vegas out of the running for the top 3 quarterbacks, which is Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May. But Michigan's J.J. McCarthy could be an option in the middle of round 1. He is an efficient passer with good mobility. I'm just going to tell you this right now. The worst thing that the Raiders could possibly do that's realistic without drafting a guy like Damon Arnett in round 1. Let's be real here. But the worst thing that the Raiders could do in round 1 of the 2024 NFL draft is to take J.J. McCarthy. McCarthy's not going to be a good NFL quarterback. Now, he might get put in the right system. If you put McCarthy on the San Francisco 49ers and you let him run the offense similar to Brock Purdy, he would have some success. But right now where the Raiders currently at, if you bring on a QB like McCarthy, he's going to have to sit. He's not even close to being ready right now. And I will say it, he's the worst thing the Raiders could possibly do in round 1. It's the worst thing you could possibly do. It makes no sense. The final thing is this. The big prediction for the offseason, according to ESPN, and guess what? It involves trading Davante Adams. I know, some of y'all are like, not quite though. The Raiders will not trade receiver Davante Adams to the Jets. This move has been rumored for months. But I am betting Adams will decide he's happy playing under Pierce once Pierce has the interim tag taken off his title as coach. Adams went over 1,000 receiving yards for the 4th time in the past 5 seasons. And I agree here with ESPN. And I know what people do in the offseason. People always think, Garrett Wilson changed from 5, or he freed up number 17. That means Adams is coming there. Aaron Rodgers wants his old buddy back. Here's the thing, though. If Davante Adams is going to stand up there at that podium and say, we want Antonio Pierce back, if Maxx Crosby stands up there on that podium and says, we want Antonio Pierce back, and then Mark Davis brings back Antonio Pierce, and then you go away and you trade Davante, everything that you just did for locker room continuity and why you decided to hire AP was to keep that locker room together, you just ripped it in half. It makes no sense. If you're going to keep Antonio Pierce, you're not going to trade Davante Adams. I'm telling you right now, it ain't happening. Plus, the Raiders have already paid him for the 2024 season. So I agree here. It's not going to happen. But if you're going to keep Tay, you better get him a franchise quarterback because you gave him a shitty Derek Carr with the Josh McDaniels offense, and then you gave him a shitty Jimmy Garoppolo, I can't even believe Brian Hoyer started the game in 2023, and you gave him a rookie. You want to make Davante happy, get him a franchise quarterback. So with all of this being said, what is the Raiders' biggest priority this off-season? What's the biggest priority? Is it getting a QB? Is it hiring the right coach? Is it hiring the right GM? Maybe it's keeping Patrick Graham. What do you believe is the Raiders' biggest priority this offseason? And in no particular order, these are the 5 things that the Raiders need to do, right? You got to either hire Champ Kelly or Ed Dodds to be the general manager. Then you got to hire Antonio Pierce. To me, at this point, if you don't hire AP, I do think that you lose Maxx Crosby, and I do think that you lose Davante Adams, because if Max leaves, guess what? Davante, he's definitely out. You got to hire a great OC. If you're going to keep Antonio Pierce and you're going to keep Patrick Graham, you need to be able to hire an offensive coordinator that has some experience having the keys to that car. And maybe it's a Cliff Kingsbury. Maybe it's a Clint Kubiak. I don't know. It needs to be a well-respected OC, and Mark might have to pay him a little bit of extra money. Then you got to find your franchise quarterback. If you're able to do everything you did last season and you get a great quarterback and you let the OC do his thing, I think great things are happening for the Las Vegas Raiders, and it's why I am the most excited this year that I have been in a very long time. Now, remember, y'all, we make videos every single day here on this channel. Make sure you click that subscribe button. Make sure you got those notifications turned on. And when the Las Vegas Raiders do finally name a head coach, when they do finally name a GM, we will be going live. We will be partying here on the Raiders Report.